Recently, former President Olusegun Obasanjo criticized President Tinubu's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State, calling it a threat to democracy. Now, former presidents have every right to speak, but when the same voices once sat at the very center of power, we must ask, what did they do with it? Under President Obasanjo, the democratic institutions we rely on today were not always strengthened. They were often manipulated, weakened, or outright bypassed. Let's start with the legislation. Obasanjo didn't just have disagreements with the National Assembly, he reshaped it to suit his agenda. In just 5 years, 3 Senate presidents were forced out: Evans Eweren, Chuba Okadibo, and Adolphus Wabara, all amid controversies that many believe were driven more by political calculations than principle. Even those who completed their terms, like Ayim Pius Ayim and Ken Namani, often did so while clashing with the presidency. The message was clear: fall in line or fall out. And that approach filtered down into the political system too. When then PDP National Chairman Audu Ogbe wrote a letter expressing concern over the handling of the Anambra political crisis, the consequences were swift and chilling. According to multiple reports, President Obasanjo himself allegedly pointed a gun at Audu Ogbe, compelling him to resign. Internal party democracy collapsed. Party loyalty no longer meant shared vision, it meant absolute obedience. And speaking of Anambra, it was under Obasanjo that Governor Chris Ngigi was forcibly kidnapped from office in what is now remembered as one of the darkest moments of our democracy. Ngigi himself would have this to say in his words later: under Obasanjo, a policeman pointed an AK-47 at my head. One AIG ordered me to resign. The plan was to kidnap me, drug me, and remove me illegally.
And he was pointing his AK-47 rifle on my table, on me and the table.
The line between security and politics became dangerously narrow. If a sitting governor could be treated this way, what did that say about the state of the rule of law? And now let's not forget the boldest use of federal might, the outright removal of elected governors via the declaration of state of emergency under Olusegun Obasanjo. The states that were affected were Plateau State Governor Joshua Dariye was suspended and replaced with a sole administrator. Ekiti State Governor Ayo Fayose was removed after an impeachment mired in controversy. Oyo State Governor Rasheed Ladoja was forcibly impeached and removed by lawmakers allegedly loyal to Baba Iyabo. Now, developments in these states were frozen, budgets were stalled, projects were abandoned, governance handed over to unelected administrators or acting officials who lacked public legitimacy. And it wasn't about stability, it was about control. Nowhere was the assault on our democracy more blatant than during the infamous third term agenda. Lawmakers were allegedly offered 15 million each to amend the constitution to allow Obasanjo to remain in power beyond the mandated 2 terms. In fact, it got so brazen that this was the first time Nigerians were seeing bags of cash brought into the National Assembly, one of them publicly displayed on the floor of the House of Reps by lawmakers themselves. The moment wasn't just about money, it was about a system cracking under the weight of executive overreach. Trust in the National Assembly took a nosedive. Ghana Must Go became a symbol of how easily democracy could be traded, not for votes but for envelopes. Well, let's not forget what happened when Lagos, under the then Governor Bola Ahmed Tinubu, tried to expand its local government structure. Obasanjo's administration withheld federal allocation, punishing Lagosians for a move that had constitutional backing. Now, fast forward today, President Tinubu declares a state of emergency in Rivers State amid deepening political turmoil and institutional breakdown. The move was constitutionally sound. The intent was to restore order and preserve democratic governance. And now the same man who once used federal might to chase a third term, intimidate lawmakers, remove governors, and cripple dissent is warning us about democracy. No government is perfect, but President Tinubu has so far shown a commitment to institutional process, not force. The Senate remains intact, funds are being disbursed without political bias, opposition figures continue to operate freely, and in Rivers, the emergency move was not about control, it was about calming tensions without silencing voices. History matters, not to shame, but to remind, because democracy is not only about what leaders say when they leave office, it's about what they did when they held the keys. So yes, let's discuss democracy, but let's do it with full context. So this is Truth on Field. I'm your host, Osigomo Ikiroda, the principal and CEO of Bush Radio Academy.